welcome to Masters of Real Estate. My name is Matthew Owens, and today I have an awesome guest on the line, a good friend of mine that's in one of my mastermind groups, Cory, that specializes in mobile home parks and focuses in that space, which is one space that I absolutely love, that I think is really valuable as a recession-resistant asset. And I love that he's involved in this, has been doing it for a long time. So welcome, Cory. Thanks so much for the show. Could you give a little bit of a background on how you got started in this? Because everybody's like freaking out about buying their first single-family home and fixing and flipping it, or going through and getting their first rental. But mobile home parks is a whole nother game, right? There's, a bigger scary factor and probably a lot more work involved. So I'd love to hear your story and how you got started, man.
Yeah, it's definitely got its own nuances. So yeah, thanks. I'm really excited to be here, Matt. I love talking parks. So my background, I was a structural engineer before I got into real estate. And so back in 2015, I was pulling 60 to 80 hour weeks pretty consistently I had been for several years straight. And I had my first kid. He was less than 2 years old. And I was just like, I'm missing seeing my kid grow up, is what I felt like. And I remember one week in particular where I was leaving before he would wake up in the morning and coming home after he was already asleep. So I wasn't seeing him awake at all. I was just in the office so much. It was killing me. And then I think it was like a Sunday after a week straight of this. It was like 5 something p.m. And I was like, screw this, I'm going home. I'm going to at least like give my kid a bath and put him to bed and spend a little time.
Yeah.
And so when I went home to take him away from my wife, to give him his bath and stuff, he looked at me like he didn't even know me, freaked out, total stranger danger, started clawing back to try to get to mom. And like, I realized I was becoming a stranger to my own son. It broke my heart. So I kind of snapped at that point. I had a bit of a breakdown, but I decided to go in some other direction. I didn't know what other direction that was. I was like, I can't do what I'm doing right now until I'm 65. And so I started researching all kinds of stuff. And then I did the same thing most of the other real estate people did. Someone gave me Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and it was like, oh, assets that pay you. Like, why did I have to be 35 years old before I figured this out? It's not that complicated. Especially compared to engineering, the math is actually not bad. So speaking of, like, you were saying, like, people trying to get their first deal, my wife and I were going to do a duplex, threeplex, fourplex. That was our first goal. We researched a bunch of things, and it says, okay, the first thing you should do is pick a niche. So we said, sweet, we'll do a small multi. And so I left brain nerd, so I built a spreadsheet and I figured out how to build a pro forma, and I started analyzing a bunch of deals. And even back then I was getting kind of discouraged with what I was seeing as far as like, these things are barely going to cash flow or not. It was not what I had in my mind after I read
Rich Dad. Cash flow to live off of one asset, or
it'd be like, I'm going to dump $100,000 in and get $200 a month, or it was
right, something small, right?
Yeah, and in hindsight, they would have done great, but and I know I could have dug around and found deals, right? Like I was just looking at things that were listed, but right. I stumbled across a mobile home park for sale on Craigslist, a little 9-unit thing. It was on Craigslist, and I punched that in my spreadsheet and was like, "Oh, this looks much better."
You're aging yourself with the Craigslist thing there.
Yeah, so. Yeah. It's crazy with like kids and then COVID. There's like a time warp there.
I remember those days. Craigslist.
So that was it. I kind of went down the mobile home park rabbit hole from there, and I did my first. I'm losing count now, but I did my first like 5 deals were of just my wife and I between 2016 and 2020. And then in 2021, I partnered up with my wife's brother, Thomas, and we found a freedom investing group. And now we're pulling in investors who want to join in and come along with us for the ride. So it's been a ton of fun, and I love it. So
what is it that a lot of times, it feels like every time someone wants to jump in that I hear these stories consistently, there's some pain and backbreaking moment where you're like, that's it, that's enough. And I think that's really important to understand, that everybody's on their own path. You said you started at 25. I was or 35. I was 26 when I was having that same moment going, I can't do accounting work anymore. It's just driving me crazy. Doing audit and tax work, bored out of my mind, going, I can't do this until I'm 65 years old or longer. It just is not a viable long-term thing mentally for me personally. A lot of people love that work, and that's great. I just personally, it's a tough thing to do, right? It's a grind, it's monotonous, right? And sometimes that, in the real estate world, I look back going, oh God, that was so easy, comparatively, because you just had a job, right? Now you jump into the entrepreneurship and you have lots of ups and downs and waves and headaches to accomplish and problems that come at you. And I think having that right, consistent mindset of moving forward and pushing is really key. And remembering that pain as you go through will push you to your why, right? And I think that aha moment of reading Rich Dad Poor Dad was a really big key in being able to actually change your mindset to be able to say, I didn't realize this even existed to be able to accomplish, and I had no idea. And I think this is common for a lot of people. These books that people recommend, the Rich Dad Poor Dad, the Think and Grow Rich, the How to Win Friends and Influence People, all of these different types of books open your mind in a totally different way. And it's a lot of times the starting point, just something crazy amazing that could happen in your life to open your mind in a way to think differently. So just wanted to point that out because it's really important. A lot of people don't see that aspect of things. So when it came down to mobile home parks, with your first park being 9 units and stuff like that, and I've assumed that you had your learning curve and stuff like that. What were some of the trials and tribulations you had to go through when you were starting off doing this in the mobile home park space, and what you didn't know you had to learn? I'd say in the beginning, those headaches that you were like, oh my gosh, this mobile home park business is hard, right? So what are the things that you got to watch out for, I'd say, in this space?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of things, right? Like you're effectively managing so we actually ended up, we didn't buy that 9, we bought it was a 12-unit park that was our first park.
Okay.
But you become kind of like the manager of the community. You're almost like the mayor of this little community, right? And so there is a ton of stuff that goes along with that. The first few that we did, there was all kinds of drama, things that happened. But I think the biggest one, the overall went very well.
Jerry Springer show stuff, so.
Yeah. Although I would say I know a lot of people in the apartment space, and I've certainly got my stories from the mobile home park space, but I don't think it's any crazier than what I hear.
Oh yeah, they're
at the higher end of the spectrum.
Actually, in multifamily than they are in mobile homes. So
yeah. Most of our residents are just great, decent people. I just think you get a big enough group of anybody together, and there's going to be one
for sure,
interesting
But that's the misconception, right, as well, is that, hey, the tenant base is so low, and it's not necessarily the case. It's just cheaper there to be able to live comparatively to a multifamily, but that doesn't mean that the people are less quality or that's just low income in some cases, right?
No, by and large, it's great people. We have, it's the biggest groups of people that we have is kind of 2 groups. So one is like older folks who are on fixed incomes, maybe they got Social Security or something, and then it's just like families that are working and they just don't have a super high income job and they need an affordable place to live. And there's no other, this is the most affordable form of housing in the country. There's affordable apartments, but those aren't really affordable. They're only affordable because the government steps in and does Section 8 or LIHTC or some other thing to make them affordable. So this is the only one that works just on its own that I know of. So the folks that live there, we have people that work in the doctor's office. It might be the lady scheduling your next appointment at the doctor's office. It could be the person helping you at the grocery store. It could be the person driving the truck to deliver stuff, your Amazon drive, all the people that make society function. The people that were the essential workers in COVID, we didn't have really many issues during COVID because all of our people were still employed. They can't stop. So they're the people that make society work. So they are good people. They have families. They just want a yard. They can park by their house. They don't have neighbors banging on the wall because their kids are being loud. So that's by and large what it is. So sorry, I think we deviated a little there, but that's my little rant on the residents.
It's a big misconception, I think, because of the tenant base mentality, where a lot of people think, they got the mentality from the Jerry Springer show, thinking this is what that tenant base is, and it's absolutely false, across the board. And so I think it's important. Yeah, you have bad tenants in every walk of life or every asset class, I'll say, but at the same time, the majority is what you're really looking for. And you could have a park that's managed completely wrong with a complete wrong tenant base that they should have never moved into that park and have to clean it up and make it a livable, place to live in. It's a matter of the management. You could have the same thing with multifamily too, though. So
100%. Yeah, your tenant screening goes. I've learned that their tenant screening goes a long way. We've inherited some parks where we've had to definitely improve the. Some people just had to go for the benefit of the rest of the people there who just wanted to live a nice, quiet.
And what are some of the headaches that you've had to deal with as an operator, working in this space?
Yeah, so the big one that I have, so have had a bunch of deals that went really, really well. I had one deal that did not. So this is actually like a pretty tangible takeaway no matter what your real estate niche. I bought a park that had a wastewater treatment plant, which is private utilities, which I have other, like, if you do it right, I think private utilities can be great. But I was scared of it, so I did all the research and I did all the due diligence. I had it inspected. I met the operator. I talked to the city, the county, the state, the federal EPA. Like, everything was fine. It was all in compliance, tip top.
Right.
But the one thing I missed was on the insurance. I took the appraiser's word for the replacement value of it, and he was way off. I should have gone, in hindsight, like, if I ever do another wastewater treatment plant deal or anything where there's like insurable stuff, I should have gone and got a quote from a contractor, because he was way off. And what happened was we had a fire. The building that housed it burned down and totaled it. And so that one was like a year-long nightmare. But we got through it. Fortunately, we had done the other stuff right. We had built back water and sewer. We'd filled in the empty pads. We cleaned it up. It was a very nice park right on a river. Nice. Stand-up paddleboarders going by. It was a great community, except for that one issue. And had I had the right insurance, it still would have been a headache, but it would have been a home run. So that was I guess the biggest pain. So there's we ended up being able to do a cash out refi to help do cover the replacement, because we had added a bunch of equity, and then I eventually sold it and we got out of it. But that's a tangible takeaway. Like, double check your insurance values, and don't go through the year of stress that I went through on that one.
That's crazy. It's something you wouldn't necessarily think about, where you're like, okay, well, he's insuring it. That's the appraised value. Cool. They did a good job on their, appraisal and all that is what you're thinking in your head. But yeah, getting those quotes of like what real replacement costs are, especially now with inflation coming in on all your big ticket items, is key. We're seeing insurance go through the roof on a lot of assets, because they're saying, hey, you want full replacement cost? Things are costing $250 to $500 a square foot to build, depending on what area of the country and what materials, all that kind of stuff. And so the interesting insurance for 3,000 square foot homes go through the roof, to where you're like, this is just not feasible in this situation. And you have to actually go get new build quotes to show the insurance company to insure for a lower amount, because they're insuring $500,000 properties for $900,000 because of the replacement.
Oh, so they're going the other direction. Oh,
they're going the complete other direction on the insurance now. And we're going.
You don't want to be high and you don't want to be low. Like, I think that's a number you want to have right on.
Right. Yeah, because it's going to affect cash flow like crazy. Yeah. And at the end of the day, we're going, no, here's the cost to rebuild. Insure for this amount. We don't want more than what we paid for the building as our risk. Right, is what we're trying to mitigate. And so, we're not going to have claims for stuff under $10,000 or anything anyways, because we don't want insurance premiums changing. And so we just kind of eat some of those little things, So I say little things being $10,000, but that's kind of not little, but you get my point. Well,
so like, I think the key thing though is you're going to take some lumps, and then it's like, do you try to, so like you try to learn and grow from it and use it. So I've just tried to say, like, okay, I spent that money on a college education and infrastructure replacement. So we actually have another deal that we got after that, where I put that to use. So we found a park that was over in Illinois, and it had a failing well water system. But otherwise, it was 100% occupied, tenant-owned park in a great location. But it needed $600,000 of well work. And the owner he had the equity in it, but he didn't have the cash to do it. And so we were able to come in and get it at a really good price. And then on top of that, get a seller credit for most of the replacement cost. So we came in and executed it. And so now we're at a super low basis. And now we've got brand new infrastructure, 100% occupied, tenant-owned park in a great location where it's right in the path. I mean, it's right at the edge of where all the subdivisions have been marching, and they're literally like building subdivisions around it. So it's right in the path of progress. So I'm trying to I try to at least make lemonade out of the lemon on that one. So.
I think that brings me to a good point, which is the point of buying these mobile homes or multifamilies, other assets, is to buy them low, renovate them to improve value as much as you can, and increase income, decrease expenses, and be able to force that appreciation, force that value increase and that cash flow. One of the parks that we bought last year, our goal on that, it had 52 vacant slabs and 26 down units. And by adding the 52 new units and rehabbing the 26 down units, we'd be looking at about a 13.8% cap rate at our cost. And so looking at how you value add that, and a cap rate, just for people that don't know, is basically you're taking your a cap rate at cost or cap rate at market value is a little bit different. I got yelled at a YouTube comment for that. But anyways, so the cap rate at cost is basically your total cost of the project and what it's producing in annual cash flow. So you're going to divide the two to come up with your cap rate. Same thing when it comes to market value. Usually you see brokers say, hey, cap rate is, you know, right around 6 or 7% or whatever the market is showing in that particular market. It means what people are trading for comparative to the income it creates. So if you can increase income, you can increase the sale of that asset based on what things are trading for. And so what are the different strategies you see as far as mobile home parks that you can add value to a particular park and increase the revenue, decrease expense?
So what you just outlined there is the reason I did my first few years where I was just like, I just bought them because I was like, hey, I just want the cash flow, and I'll just pay the mortgage down and just take the cash flow.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, when I realized how the math on that works, when you raise the revenue, you shoot the value way up. There is a huge, huge lever there, and it's like if you were gonna flip or burr a house, you can buy the ugly house in the nice neighborhood and make it nice. But the difference is, someone like me who's very left brain, I would pick the wrong paint color and screw it all up. But in this case, there's no subjectivity to it. There is, you know, it's still reliant on the market too, but you can, in a flat market, you don't need to rely on the market for appreciation. You can force the appreciation. If you increase the revenue by 50%, you increase the property value by 50%. If you can double it, you can double it. And so it's very predictable. So then it just becomes, okay, can I execute can I set up a business plan and execute it to actually increase the revenue, which then shoots the equity way, way, way up. And then the goal is then you got to figure out what to do with that equity, right? Do you cash out refi? Do you sell it? Somehow that's the game. And once my eyes open to like how that worked, it's like, oh my gosh, we can build a lot of wealth with math, and I like math. So so some of the things
engineers and accountants happy, you know. So.
Yes, yeah, right. Us left brain folks. I'm going to pick the wrong color granite countertop every single time, but if you give me a spreadsheet, like I can nail that. But yeah, so some of the things, the biggest thing, I think mobile home parks they're everybody thinks of them as this cash flow asset, and they are, but I think they're underappreciated for the value add a lot. I think they've got some of the most value add potential of any asset class, because it's not just, hey, we're going to put some wallpaper and new paint and try to like raise everybody's rent by $15, like might be like an apartment person's plan. It's there's literally an affordable housing crisis. People cannot find enough housing. And yet there are these parks that have been owned by people for decades and decades. They have no mortgage, so they're not really motivated to go fill in the empty pads. And it takes a lot of money and work to do that, capital investing into it. But if there's literally empty pads sitting there waiting for a family that needs an affordable home in an area with an affordable housing crisis, and they're just sitting there. And so you can bring in homes. It takes work to do, which is why it's just enough work where like the owners who have had it forever, it's just enough where it seems like they're not really motivated to do much of it, which is fine. Good for them. They're happy. But you can buy these things and infill the empty pads. And it's like being able to add extra floors to an apartment building, because all of a sudden you have more units than you had. And so so that's really the big one. There's also, can you reduce expenses? There's maybe you can build back water and sewer, which I think is a much more equitable thing to do than just raising the rent to cover it, because then everybody, they can impact their own costs by conserving water. And we've seen, like, I've seen some parts where the water bill cut in half after we did that. So it's also got some conservation stuff to it. Can you, are there other expenses? Is there, sometimes there's just a way overpaid crappy manager that we can automate. Like, we like to automate all the collections fully. So we don't, like, the manager does not accept payments on site at our properties. And so that takes away their biggest pain point and their biggest scope of work. So then they just get to be the good guy or gal and like report problems and kind of help solve things. And so then that's a much more attractive thing to be able to hire someone for an affordable cost. So there's a bunch of things you can do, but the empty pad thing, I think, is the big thing that makes it such a huge opportunity right now to help affordable housing and build wealth. like so cool.
And it's the most undervalued thing. The affordable housing piece of this, being able to add more housing to people in this inflationary economy, is really super awesome to be able to do. And if you can take someone that doesn't have the money to go add more units or rehab empty units and add value yourself by doing that, that's a huge upside. Just to give everybody an example, we're talking about the two main things, or the main things I see as far as value plays. Obviously, if rents are under rented, you're going to increase them, right? But at the same time, billing back utilities, or putting utility infrastructure in place to be able to do that, or adding units or rehabbing down units. Normally, multifamilies do not have the added unit type value add. They might have some utility bill back type potentials, but most buildings don't have that anymore, where the tenants are actually going through and paying their own utilities. There might be a small common area electric or something like that in a lot of apartment buildings. But at the end of the day, I really love the value add piece according to this, because if you do the math, right, and I know we both love the math, but if you increase a 100-unit park by either increasing rents or decreasing expenses by $100 a month, and say it costs you $10,000 a unit to do that, right? You're talking about $1 million of capital expenditure to put into that building, but for that $1 million, you're increasing revenue by $120,000 a year. And that at a 7 cap interest rate, or a 7 cap, that's about $1.7 million worth of value. So you're getting a $700,000 bump in value for $1 million capital expenditure, if it took 10 grand a unit on every single unit to do that, which would be shocking to be able to have to do that, right? And so $10,000 a unit will renovate an entire mobile home probably, or close to it.
And it's even better, because on a lot of those renovations, say it cost you 10, say it cost you 20, you're selling the home too. So you're going to recoup a lot of that. So it's not even, you might need to tie up that $1 million, but you probably get the $1 million back at the end of it too. As far as the infill costs, right? Like,
right. And I think that's something that goes, something people don't understand with mobile homes is you have lot rent, and then you have park-owned home rent, or homeowners that own these, right? You either own the home yourself as far as the park goes and the lot, or someone else owns the home and they're paying you lot rent on that home. And a lot of times lenders don't like a lot of mobile homes owned by the park, versus they want a certain percentage of them that are actually owned by the park, and the rest of them sold off. And so there's an awesome seller finance strategy to utilize, and we're doing that with our own fund right now with regard to our mobile home financing fund, or we're basically going through and financing these mobile homes around the country to be able to add them and then sell them to homeowners that will put another down payment down to mitigate our risk as well. And then that mobile home is financed usually over a shorter period of time than a normal 30-year fixed, of course. It's usually like a 10-year type of term. And you're trying to emulate market rents in the seller finance strategy. But you can get your cash back for the renovation out of these down payments in many times, so that it really doesn't cost you anything, and you just fill up all your lot rent, right? And so I like both. I like having some park-owned homes because I like the rental income, but also on the other side of things, like sometimes there's a cleanness to having no park-owned homes yourself and having all outside owners own those things as far as operations management. And so on the operations of these things, what are the biggest things that you should be paying attention to when you're operating a park to make sure that it's running efficiently, that you are doing a good job at managing it and making sure that it's operationally sound?
Right. So, I mean, some of the KPIs, a lot of the KPIs we're tracking are going to be similar to apartments, but we're obviously tracking occupancy and infill rate. Are we filling things in? As far as keeping things going, I like that I didn't invent this. This was like a Frank Rolfe thing, but I like the acronym, the BAD. It's just the meat and potatoes stuff, right? It's the budget, the difference, taking the time every year to do a good budget, and then go through the P&L every month line by line and see like where are we over, why are we over, does that make sense? Oh, is the water bill double what it should be? Do we need to call somebody out to look for a leak? Like it's really staying on top of that P&L every single month. And then the other one is collections. Like we put a lot of effort into our collections process. Right. I think we're really, I'll say I think we're very good at collections. And I think having that automated and then being on top of it every single month and not, addressing things before, don't let them, if someone's a month behind and you make kind of a big deal out of it, they can get caught up. If you let them get 3 months behind, they might not be able to get caught up, and now you're going to end up in an eviction. So I think do a little bit of that tough love early when it's a problem in the hundreds and not the thousands actually helps keep people in their homes. So
makes sense. And we used to run a property management company, and some of the main efficiencies are all part of that management, right? The collections, what do you do in that situation? What's the procedures, right? Marketing for new tenants, the accounting aspect, communication with both tenants and owners on repairs and service calls and things like that, and having proper quality control on those particular items, making sure that you have all the on the ground management stuff, that all those operational efficiencies, and then having that asset management up above to say, where's the total direction going to go? How are we going to guide this ship and make sure that, hey, we're on track for our business plan associated with this park? So I think those things are really the biggest key to operational efficiencies. And trust me, property management is not easy. It's not a difficult thing. And you say that you talked about trying to take the pressure off the manager on the ground on collections. I used to tell the management company, hey, go blame the California office. Don't let them blame you. Say, I can't do anything. I'm trying my hardest. I'll do everything I can for you, but it's the California office. They're pushing me to do this. So, and it's they understand because I'm from California and it's communist out here. So, but anyways. So, from a recession-resistant standpoint of this, can you tell me why you think in a potential recessionary climate, mobile homes would be a smart bet to invest in?
Yeah, I think they're one of the smartest ones. If you look at the Great Recession and COVID, the pandemic, they're one of the best, if not the best performing asset classes through each. The reason is because it's affordable housing. So if the economy goes up, housing gets expensive, and it's a problem for affordable housing. If the economy goes down, the people right above it may have problems, and they become your new residents. So no matter which way the economy goes, unless someone figures out a magic wand to solve this affordable housing crisis, I think these things are going to be needed for a really long time. And then, like I mentioned, the other aspect of it is your residents if you do a good job tenant screening. That's one I didn't mention, but it's very, very important in the operations side of it. If your residents tend to either be on fixed income or very, very important essential worker style jobs that don't tend to go away in a recession. The doctor's office, I mean, literally, these are people in our parks. Like the lady who works at the doctor's office, people are going to go to the doctor even in a recession, right? Medical stuff is medical stuff. You got to eat. If people are working in food service, if they're working at the grocery store, if they're driving trucks, it's all the things that are less impacted by a recession, I would say. So it's those two things: it's affordable housing and the stable income of the residents.
You're going to get demand in either way, whether it's an up market or a down market in the mobile home park space. And I think you have that built-in floor sitting there for you for the rents.
And the residents owning their own homes helps a lot too, because they have equity in their home. And so they care, like, a lot of them have little gardens. This is their home. They own it. It's theirs. They're just, their lot rent is sort of like equivalent of your property taxes on a normal house, right? And so they're going to fight typically a little harder because they don't want to lose their equity in the home, right? So they not that it never happens, but the delinquency rate is actually much lower than you'd expect for affordable housing. And what's really cool is sometimes when people are going to move out, I've heard the average stay is supposed to be like 14 years in a mobile home park. I haven't actually measured that, but I believe it's got to be in that range. Like, people don't tend to leave. When they do, because they have that equity, they want to sell their home. So they will typically find your next resident for you, who we will have to screen. But so it's very common to have them move out on the 30th and the new person moves in on the 1st. And so you get zero costs, 0 day or 1 day turnarounds for residents too. So all those things contribute to making, like, the stability of them, I think is one of their number one selling points.
That's awesome. Yeah, I really like investing in them from that standpoint too, because I think the upside potential with the value add coupled with the safety of the recession aspect, and then because of that value add, because it's so great, and many times you're able to really increase your equity position if there is a down market and cap rate compression, or an increase in cap rates. Then you have a built-in, like some built-in equity to buffer you for any potential downside risk associated with it, which is what I really like. As long as you know those operational efficiencies, which of course the operator on any deal is the most important aspect, right? Of course,
Right.
you got to do the homework on that deal, but the operator is what's going to make and break you as an operator. And I think it's one of the most undervalued things is understanding who you're investing with in the first place and their experience. So the fact that you have a bunch of experience, and both of our partners that we're working on some new parks coming up with some exciting stuff. We're looking at a 500 unit deal right now in Tennessee, which is really super exciting. And we're going to be moving forward with that and doing due diligence and everything on that project. And it's exciting times right now when you can find deal flow in a very difficult market because you know what to look for and know how to value add these different projects. So if people want to get a hold of you, Cory, how do they actually go do that? What's your best contact information?
Yeah, so two things. One, you can look for me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on there. I will get back to you if you shoot me a DM and say hi. The other thing is I do have a free educational PDF about mobile home parks if people want to learn a little bit more. It's at passivemhp.com.
PassiveMHP.com. That's awesome. Yeah, anytime you can get free education like that, I'd highly recommend it. We have a free due diligence checklist on our website, MatthewOwens.com, as well, when you're doing due diligence on guys like Cory that are doing all the work for everybody and helping with the financing and helping doing that workload involved where the investors can be passive and not have to do all the work. They don't realize a lot of times that they don't have to go buy the house themselves and renovate it, take on the loan, go do all the work and those types of things. They can invest passively in big projects like this where they can put smaller chunks of money into multiple asset classes, multiple markets around the country, and multiple deals. So, and operators as well. So you can actually go diversify and get a great portfolio while the operator takes on the risk of the loan and does all the workload involved and finds the park and does everything. And being passive is the key, right? That's the whole idea, is to become the investor that doesn't have to work in the first place. And so it's really an interesting strategy for a lot of investors. So I'd highly recommend talking with Cory about this stuff if anybody wants to reach out. Thanks so much, Cory. I really appreciate the time today and talking through some of these key issues with mobile home parks that I think really are massive value.
Yeah, thank you. This has been a ton of fun, Matt.
Do you want to learn how to create financial freedom in your life through real estate and take your investing business to the next level? If so, you can follow us in one of the following ways. First, you can take one of our free webinars on how to analyze property, how to raise capital for real estate, and how to market and find deals. Three of the key pillars to becoming a successful real estate investor. Number two, you can join us on our mailing list where you'll get tips and tricks on real estate investing directly to your inbox. And number three, you can take our 6-month real estate course that teaches you every aspect of real estate investing you can think of, and more importantly, create financial freedom in your life through real estate investing strategies that I teach. If you want a master's in real estate in 6 months, this course is for you. We're going to go over how to raise money, promissory notes, syndications, fixing and flipping, buy and hold investing, tax and legal structures, self-directed retirement accounts, financial education, how to run a business, how to market and find your deals, and most importantly, how to create that financial freedom in your life so that you can stop trading your time for money and create passive real estate cash flow that you can live off of. If you're interested, go ahead and click on one of the links below, and I look forward to seeing you guys on the other side.